Darkness spread over the colony as people whispered about the wild alien girl. No one said her name because saying it was believed to bring bad luck. Children were told never to wander near the forest. Men guarding the borders spoke in low voices, telling stories of how she had torn through chains, how she had killed 3 armed soldiers with her bare hands. Every time her story was told, the details grew sharper, scarier, like a nightmare passed from one mouth to another. Some said her eyes glowed in the dark. Others swore she could smell fear like blood. But one thing was clear. Everyone feared her. The colony built warning signs on the edge of the forest. Rough wooden boards painted in red marked the danger zone. Stay away. Do not cross. The ground near the border carried strange claw marks, as if some beast had dragged its body there, marking its territory. People said those were her warnings, her way of saying, "This is my land." No farmer, no hunter, no soldier dared to step beyond those marks. They would glance at the trees, shiver, and hurry back. The forest looked alive, shadows twisting into strange shapes, the silence heavy as if even the birds refused to sing there. But one human soldier did not believe in fear. His name was whispered later as the one who dared. On that night, when the moon shone cold silver light, he stood at the border. His boots pressed against the dirt, close to the claw marks, that his breath visible in the chill air. Behind him, the village lights flickered like small, fragile stars. In front of him, the forest waited, quiet and endless. He knew the stories. He knew he should walk away. Yet his heart pulled him forward. He wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. He tightened the strap of his rifle, but did not lift it. He told himself he was only curious, but deep inside he felt something different. Something drew him toward her, like a force he could not explain. He had heard the older soldiers say she was a monster, but he remembered the tone of their voices. It was not just fear, it was shame too. It was as if they had seen something they could not understand and tried to bury it under tales of horror. He wanted to know what they were hiding. The soldier stepped past the signs. The earth beneath his feet was soft, almost sticky, as if it had soaked blood long ago. The air grew thicker the deeper he walked. Trees twisted around him, their branches clawing at the night sky. Each sound, even the crunch of his own boots, echoed too loud. He could almost feel unseen eyes watching him. His fingers brushed the trigger of his gun, but he forced himself not to grip it. He told himself that if she truly was wild, showing a weapon first would only make things worse. He walked further, his breath steady, though his heart hammered hard enough to hurt. Suddenly, the smell changed. A strange scent, half sweet, half sharp, like burnt flowers, clung to the air. He froze. It was not a smell that belonged to the forest. It was her. The stories were real. She was close. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to turn back, to run before it was too late. But his legs refused. Curiosity chained him in place. Then came the sound. A low growl, deep and raw, carried through the trees. It was not an animal's cry. It was almost human, but twisted with rage. The soldier's throat went dry. He slowly turned his head toward the sound. Between the trees, faint eyes glowed, reflecting the moonlight. Not one pair, 2. She was watching him. His chest tightened, his breath caught, but he did not move. If he ran, she would chase. If he raised his weapon, she would kill. He knew instinctively that she was faster, stronger, deadlier. For a long moment, nothing happened. Only her eyes remained, staring, unblinking. The growl turned into a sound like laughter, sharp and broken. She stepped forward just enough for him to see the outline of her figure. She was smaller than he expected, her body thin, but her movements were dangerous, filled with the sharp grace of a predator. Her hair was tangled like vines, her skin marked with scars. She was no longer a child, no longer fully grown, but something between wild, untamed, and burning with fury. The soldier swallowed, his voice low, almost shaking, but he forced himself to speak. "I'm not here to hurt you." His words broke the silence like a fragile glass dropped on stone. Her head tilted, confused. Most who saw her either screamed or attacked. No one spoke gently. She snarled, baring teeth sharp enough to tear flesh, but something in her hesitation told him she was listening. He took another step forward. She tensed like a coiled spring, her hands clenching, her body trembling as if torn between attack and retreat. The growl in her throat rose again, but her eyes flickered with something else. Curiosity. He raised his empty hands slowly, showing no threat. "I just wanted to see you," he said softly. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. The shadows leaned closer, the wind died, and even the insects fell silent. Only the two of them remained, one human, one alien, both staring into each other's eyes. Fear and danger wrapped around them like chains, but so did something stranger. Suspense stretched each second into eternity. The soldier knew that everyone believed she was a monster. They said she was death itself, waiting in the forest. But standing here, so close to her, he saw something else. She looked more lost than deadly, more broken than cruel. Yet beneath her scars and fury, there was power, the kind that could destroy or save. He realized then that this was no ordinary meeting. This was the beginning of something dangerous, something no one else dared try. He was the only one foolish or brave enough to step closer. And in that single step, the balance shifted. One move, one word, could decide whether he lived or died. She bared her teeth again, the glow in her eyes burning brighter, and the soldier's heart thunder whispered, almost to himself, "So it's true. You are real." The soldier's boots sank slightly into the damp ground as he stepped deeper, and the faint glow of her eyes sharpened. She was no longer only a shadow among the trees. Now her body became clearer in the silver light. Chains rattled softly around her wrists and ankles, rusted but still holding her to a thick iron post buried in the earth. She pulled against them once, the sound sharp and heavy, like metal crying under pressure. The soldier froze. Her hair was long, wild, and matted like she had never touched water in years. Her skin carried dirt and scars, her clothes torn into pieces that hardly covered her. She crouched low, her posture animal-like, fingers curled into claws against the ground. Her chest rose and fell quickly, and her eyes never left his face. There was no doubt this was the wild alien girl. The one people whispered about, the one who haunted the edges of every story told at night. She growled, not words, just sound, a warning that made the air around her vibrate. The soldier's hand hovered near his weapon, but did not reach for it. He forced himself to breathe slowly, knowing one wrong move could end him. Her voice broke through the growl, low and cracked, yet filled with threat. "Leave? Human." The words were jagged, but clear enough. He should have listened. Any other man would have turned back, but instead he stepped one pace closer. Her chains clinked as she lurched forward, her body colliding with the invisible limit of her cage. The impact made the post in the ground groan, but it held. She bared her teeth, eyes blazing, as if daring him to come closer still. He met her gaze, steady, calm. "I'm not afraid." His voice was quiet but strong, cutting through the silence of the forest. She tilted her head, the expression on her face caught between confusion and rage. Most who came here trembled. They screamed or begged. This man did not. His calmness unsettled her more than his presence. She hissed, shaking the chains again, testing them, her movements sharp like a cornered predator. The soldier slowly crouched, lowering himself so his eyes were closer to hers. He made sure not to reach for his weapon, not to move too fast. He wanted her to see his empty hands. She snarled again, but her eyes followed his every motion, burning with suspicion. "You don't look like a monster," he whispered. His words echoed faintly against the trees. She blinked once, stunned for a fraction of a second, then laughed, but it was not a laugh of joy. It was sharp, broken, almost mocking. "Monster. Human lie," she spat, her voice raw and bitter. "Humans fear, humans chain, monsters live here." She rattled her chains hard as if to prove it. The soldier's throat tightened. These were not just the words of something wild. These were the words of someone who remembered pain, who carried anger like fire in her bones. She was dangerous, yes, but she was not mindless. That realization made his chest ache with a mix of fear and pity. She moved closer again, her face only inches from his now, her chain stretched to its limit. He could see the scars on her neck, the cracked skin on her lips. Her breath was warm against his cheek, her eyes glowing brighter. "Fear me," she whispered, almost softly, almost like a plea. He did not flinch. Instead, he whispered back, "No." For a moment, everything froze. The air between them thickened. Her breathing slowed, her mouth parted, and her growl faded. She searched his face as though trying to understand what kind of fool sat before her. She had seen humans come and go, some with swords, some with guns, some with fire. All of them feared her. All of them hated her. But this one, he was different. He looked at her not as an animal, not as a demon, but as something else entirely. Her chains rattled as she suddenly lunged again, testing him, trying to make him jump back. He stayed still, unmoving like a stone. She snarled in frustration, her sharp teeth flashing. "Why no fear? Why stay?" she demanded, her voice breaking in confusion. He answered slowly, each word chosen with care. "Because I see more than what they say." Her breathing grew uneven. The fury in her eyes fought against something else, something quieter, something hidden beneath layers of rage and pain. She looked away for the first time, her body trembling, her fingers digging into the dirt as if grounding herself. The soldier realized she was not only fierce, she was torn apart inside, trapped not only by chains, but by memories and wounds too deep for him to see. He studied her silently, the glow of her eyes reflecting in his. He could feel the weight of her presence, the raw energy rolling off her like heat from fire. Yet beneath it all, he caught glimpses of someone tired, someone lonely. Her voice softened just enough for him to catch. "Humans should die, but you stay." Her head lifted, her glowing eyes narrowed again, searching his face for weakness. "Maybe you foolish, maybe you strong." The soldier did not answer right away. His silence became its own kind of reply. She tilted her head again, staring longer, her body still tense but no longer shaking the chains. Her growls died down into heavy breathing. The forest around them remained still, the night holding both of them in place. Suspense stretched like a wire pulled too tight. The soldier knew every second could be his last. One sudden move, one wrong word, and she would strike. But he also felt something else, an invisible thread pulling them together, a fragile connection that no weapon could make or break. She finally leaned back, her chains clinking softly. "Go," she hissed again, but her voice no longer carried the same sharpness. There was hesitation now, almost as if she was unsure whether she truly wanted him to leave. The soldier stood slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. He gave one small nod, not in fear, but in respect. Then he stepped back, each movement slow, deliberate, controlled. She watched him the entire time, her eyes glowing, her body crouched like a predator ready to strike. Yet she did not. As he reached the edge of her chain's shadow, her voice carried after him, low and strange. "Human. Different." The soldier paused, his breath caught in his chest, but he did not turn. He knew the story was only beginning. Behind him, the girl rattled her chains once more, a sound that echoed like thunder in the silence of the forest. She had not let him go because she was weak. She had let him go because for the first time, she did not understand him. And that made her more dangerous than ever. The soldier returned the next night, though his mind told him he was a fool. No one in the colony would believe he had seen her and lived. They would laugh, call him a liar, or worse, a madman. But his heart refused to let go of the memory of her eyes, glowing with fury and pain. He carried a small pack of food, dried bread and water wrapped carefully, though he doubted she would take it. Still, something told him to try. The forest was colder that night. The trees groaned under the wind, and the ground was slippery with damp leaves. Every shadow seemed alive, but he walked with steady steps. His boots pressed against the earth, leaving tracks behind him. He followed the same path as before, past the claw-marked border, past the warning signs. This time, his chest felt heavy, not with fear, but with strange expectation. When he reached the clearing, he saw her again. She was crouched low, her head resting on her knees, her hair falling like tangled ropes around her face. The chains around her rattled faintly as she breathed. For a moment, she looked less like a beast and more like a broken child locked away. But when she noticed him, her head snapped up and the wild fire returned to her eyes. She bared her teeth, growling deep in her throat. "You? Again." Her voice was rough, sharper than stone. She pulled against the chains, the metal screeching. The soldier did not move. He lowered himself slowly and placed the pack of food on the ground between them. "I brought something," he said softly. Her eyes narrowed, suspicious. She tilted her head, her tangled hair swaying, then hissed. "Poison." The word came out bitter, dripping with distrust. He shook his head. "No poison, just food, bread, water." He pushed the pack closer with the tip of his boot and then leaned back, keeping his hands raised to show no harm. For a long while, she did not move. She sniffed the air, her nose twitching like a predator's. Then, with slow, careful movements, she dragged the pack closer with one chained hand. She ripped it open with her teeth and hands, tearing at the bread like it was prey. She devoured it quickly, chewing hard, swallowing like someone who had not eaten in days. She even tipped the water to her lips, spilling half of it down her neck as she drank too fast. When the food was gone, she looked up at him again. Her face was smeared, crumbs on her lips, water dripping down her chin, but her eyes burned less fiercely. The growl in her throat softened. She still crouched like an animal, ready to spring, but there was a flicker of something else, something that looked like doubt. The soldier dared to speak. See? No poison. She did not reply at first. Her hands trembled slightly, her breathing uneven. Finally, she muttered, "Human trick." But her voice lacked the sharpness of before. It was more like a memory she could not let go, a habit carved into her. She clutched the empty pack tightly, almost protectively, before tossing it aside. He leaned closer, his voice calm. "I won't hurt you. I just want to understand." Her eyes narrowed again. "Understand?" She spat the word like it was meaningless. "Humans no understand. Humans chain. Humans fear. Humans kill." Her voice rose with each word until it broke into a hiss. She shook her chain so hard that sparks jumped from the rusted metal. Birds burst from the trees above, startled by the noise. The soldier flinched, but did not run. He forced himself to stay, his body stiff, his eyes steady. When she finally stopped, panting, her shoulders sagged as if the fury had drained her. She looked at him again, her eyes glowing faintly. "Why stay?" she demanded, her voice low and dangerous. He answered without thinking, his words rolling out before fear could stop him. "Because you're not what they say." Her mouth opened slightly, her sharp teeth catching the light. She blinked, stunned, then snarled, as if the softness of his words angered her more than any insult. "I am death," she hissed. "Touch me and you die." She pulled at her chains again, jerking forward so hard the ground shook beneath the iron post. But the soldier did not back away. Instead, he reached slowly into his coat and pulled out another piece of bread. He held it in his hand, not tossing it, not forcing it. He simply held it out toward her, close enough that she could take it if she wanted. Her eyes flicked to the bread, then back to his face. Her nostrils flared. She trembled, her lips pulling back in a snarl, but she did not lunge. She stared at him, her body frozen in indecision. Finally, she snatched the bread from his hand, her claws scraping his skin, drawing a thin line of blood. He hissed at the sting, but he did not pull away. She noticed the red mark, her eyes widening for an instant, as though surprised he had not moved. Then she tore into the bread, eating quickly. When she finished, her breathing slowed. She looked at him, this time not with hatred, but with something harder to name. Her head tilted slightly, her voice lower, softer. "Strange human," she muttered. The soldier almost smiled. He wiped the blood from his hand and said nothing. Instead, he simply sat there, cross-legged, watching her. She watched him back, her body still tense, her chains still rattling, but her eyes no longer burned with pure fury. They carried questions now, questions she herself did not know how to ask. Then the sound of boots echoed from the distance. A patrol, armed and loud, their voices breaking the quiet night. The soldier's chest tightened. If they saw him here, feeding her, talking to her, they would kill them both without hesitation. He turned his head sharply, then looked back at her. Her ears twitched. She had heard them too. For the first time, she did not snarl. She leaned closer, whispering in a strange, broken tone. "Hide." Her voice carried urgency, not threat. Her glowing eyes burned into his. He hesitated, his heart pounding. She, the feared monster, the wild girl chained in the forest, was warning him. Something shifted between them in that moment, something fragile and dangerous. He slipped into the shadows just as the patrol's torches lit the edge of the clearing. They passed close, their voices harsh, but none dared step beyond the chain's limit. They spat insults, laughed nervously, and then walked away. When the forest was silent again, the soldier stepped back out. She was still watching him, her body rigid, but her lips curved slightly, almost like a smirk. "Foolish human," she whispered. But her voice no longer sounded like hate. It sounded like the beginning of something no one could have predicted. The soldier returned once more, his steps heavier, his heart carrying the weight of what he was about to do. He knew every second with her was dangerous. He knew if anyone found out, both of them would be punished. But each night he spent in the forest, he felt his fear change into something else, something stronger. He could no longer see her as the monster everyone described. He saw her hunger, her pain, and her loneliness. And now he was ready to take the risk that no one else dared take. She was waiting when he arrived, crouched low, her chains tight against her arms. She did not snarl this time. Instead, she tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing. "Again," she said in her broken voice, not as a threat, but as a statement. She had expected him. The soldier nodded slowly and moved closer. He bent down, his hands working quickly, his fingers brushing the rusted locks that held her. The chains were heavy, cruel, biting into her skin. She jerked back in shock. "What? You do?" Her voice cracked, sharp and uncertain. He looked straight at her and whispered, "I'm setting you free." Her breath caught, and for a moment she looked more afraid than angry. She shook her head violently, her hair whipping around her face. "No. Trap. Human trick." Her body pulled away, but the soldier stayed close, his hands steady as he touched the chain again. "No trick," he whispered. "You don't belong in chains." She trembled, her body tight like a bow pulled too far. Her sharp nails dug into the dirt, ready to strike him down if he moved too fast. Yet she did not. She stayed, watching his hands. The soldier pulled at the lock, straining, forcing the old iron to bend. It screeched loudly, echoing through the trees. He froze, fearing the sound would bring others, but then pushed harder. With one final jerk, the lock snapped open. The chain slipped loose from her wrist and fell to the ground with a heavy thud. Her eyes widened. She looked down at her freed hand as though she could not believe it. The soldier reached for the chain on her other wrist, and this time she did not pull back. He broke that lock too, then moved to her ankles. The sound of each chain hitting the dirt was like thunder in the quiet night. She sat still, staring at her bare limbs. For the first time, she looked lost. Her fingers rubbed her skin where the chains had bitten deep. Scars and bruises marked her, but the iron was gone. She raised her head slowly, her glowing eyes fixed on the soldier. "Why?" she asked, her voice rough, almost breaking. He gave her the only answer he had. "Because you're not what they think you are." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she rose to her feet. She stood taller than he expected, her back straight now, that the weight of the chains no longer pulled her down. Even in her weakness, she carried a wild grace. She took one slow step toward him. He tensed, unsure if she would strike. But she stopped, close enough that he could feel the heat of her breath. Her eyes burned into his, searching for lies. When she found none, she whispered, "Foolish human." Suddenly, a sound broke through the forest. The voices of villagers. They were shouting, torches flickering in the distance. Someone had heard the chains break. Fear spread in the soldier's chest. If they saw her free, they would kill her on sight. He turned quickly, grabbing her arm. "We have to move," he said firmly. But she resisted. She looked at him, her body stiff, her eyes filled with panic. For the first time, she seemed unsure of what to do. She had lived in chains so long that freedom itself felt like a threat. "They hunt me," she whispered. "Not if I'm with you," he answered without hesitation. Something in his tone cut through her fear. She blinked, her lips tightening, then gave a short nod. Together, they moved through the trees, slipping deeper into the shadows. Her bare feet made no sound, her body moving like a predator through the undergrowth. He followed, though his boots crunched against the ground, his breath loud compared to her silence. When they reached the edge of the forest, the village lights flickered ahead. The soldier stopped, his chest rising and falling quickly. Villagers were already gathering, their faces pale with fear. They held weapons, spears, blades, and old guns. When their eyes caught sight of her walking beside him, gasps filled the air. Mothers pulled their children back. Men raised their weapons. Cries of "monster" and "kill her" spread like fire. The alien girl stiffened. She bared her teeth, a growl rumbling in her throat. But then something strange happened. Instead of lunging forward, she stepped behind the soldier. She pressed her hand lightly against his back, hiding as though seeking his shield. The crowd froze at the sight. They had expected her to attack, to roar, to kill. But she stood quietly, her glowing eyes peeking over his shoulder, more like a frightened child than a beast. The soldier raised his hand, his voice strong. "She's not a monster," he shouted. His words echoed across the square, but the villagers only murmured in confusion and anger. The girl tightened her grip on his arm. Her claws pricked his skin lightly, not in attack, but in fear. She whispered low enough only for him to hear. "They kill me." He turned his head slightly, enough for her to see his eyes. Not if I can help it. The tension in the air grew thick, the villagers stepping forward with weapons ready. The girl's breathing quickened, her wild energy burning under her skin. She was seconds away from unleashing it, but she held herself back, trusting the one human who had freed her. The soldier stood firm, his body a barrier between her and the furious crowd. His voice rang out again, sharp and certain. If you want her dead, you'll have to go through me. The villagers gasped, shocked into silence. No one expected one of their own to defend her. No one expected the soldier to risk his life for the wild alien girl. And in that silence, she pressed closer to him, her eyes glowing with something new. It was not rage, not fear. It was the beginning of trust. Night fell heavy on the colony, but there was no peace. The warning bells had sounded, and panic spread like fire. Shadows moved along the borders, not from the forest this time, but from beyond the hills. The enemy had come, raiders armed with strange weapons, their ships glowing red in the dark sky. The villagers ran for cover, women and children hiding in small huts, while men gathered with whatever weapons they had. Fear was thick in the air. Everyone knew they were outnumbered, outmatched. The soldier stood at the edge of the square, his rifle clutched tight, his heart pounding. He had freed her only a short time ago, and still the villagers hated her. They stood behind him now, whispering curses, demanding her death once this was over. Yet when the first explosions ripped through the earth, he knew she might be their only chance to live. She was beside him, her glowing eyes fixed on the flames rising in the distance. She did not tremble. Her body stood tall, wild hair whipping in the wind. For a long moment, she did not move, as if she was deciding whether to stay hidden or unleash what burned inside her. The soldier looked at her, his voice low but certain. "We need you." Her head turned sharply, her teeth flashing. "They hate me," she spat. Her voice cracked like broken stone. "They chain me. They call me monster." He stepped closer, his hand brushing her arm lightly. "But you are not a monster. You are their only hope." Something in his words reached her, her jaw clenched, her chest rising and falling faster. She could hear the screams of children, the cries of men trying to fight with sticks against blasters. She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, the fire in her gaze was brighter than the burning village. Without another word, she leapt forward. She moved like lightning, her bare feet hardly touching the ground. The raiders barely had time to react before she was upon them. With one swing of her arm, she sent a man flying into the dirt. Another raised his weapon, but she twisted, faster than the eye could follow, and snapped it in two as though it were straw. Her chains had been heavy, but now free, her strength exploded. The villagers gasped, watching the very girl they feared turn into a storm against their enemies. The soldier followed close behind, firing his rifle, covering her blind spots. But most of the fight belonged to her. She tore through their ranks, her claws sharp, her body moving with deadly grace. The raiders shouted in panic, their lines breaking apart as she cut through them. A blast struck near her feet, sending dirt and flame into the air. She snarled, her voice echoing across the battlefield, and leapt onto the attacker. Her hands clamped around his weapon, bending it until it screeched and snapped. With a final kick, she sent him sprawling. The villagers who had once cried for her death now watched with wide, stunned eyes. They saw her strength, her speed, the way she fought not just for herself, but for them. She could have left them to burn. She could have turned her power on them. But she didn't. One child, peeking from a hut, whispered, "She's saving us." The battle raged on. More raiders poured from the hills, their leader towering above the rest. He carried a blade that glowed with strange energy, his eyes fixed on her, and he barked an order. His men fell back, leaving the fight to him. The soldier raised his rifle, but she held up her hand. Mine. Her voice was steady, her chest heaving, her body covered in dust and blood. She stepped forward to meet the leader. He swung his glowing blade with inhuman strength, but she dodged, the weapon slicing through air. She darted to his side, her claws striking against the blade, sparks flying. The villagers gasped, watching a battle that looked less human and more like something pulled from an old legend. The soldier shouted her name, though he still did not know if she had one, but his voice drowned in the clash of steel and claw. She fought fiercely, each strike pushing the raider leader back. He roared, his blade flashing in wide arcs, but she was faster, wilder. Finally, she leapt high, higher than any human could, and came down hard, her claws tearing through his weapon and shattering it into pieces. The leader fell to his knees, defeated. She stood over him, breathing heavy, her glowing eyes burning with victory. For a moment, silence covered the battlefield. Then, with one final strike, she sent him crashing to the ground. The raiders broke. Without their leader, they fled into the hills, their shouts fading into the night. The fire in the village still burned, but the worst was over. The villagers stepped out slowly, their eyes wide, their weapons lowered. She stood in the middle of the square, her chest rising and falling, her body shaking with exhaustion. Blood and dirt covered her, but her eyes glowed proudly. She turned her head toward the soldier, and for the first time, her lips parted into something close to a smile. But instead of thanks, the crowd's fear returned. Murmurs rose. She's too dangerous. She will turn on us. She must be killed before it's too late. The girl heard them. Her eyes darkened again, her small smile fading. She looked at the soldier, her voice low, almost broken. See, they still hate me. The soldier stepped in front of her, raising his voice so all could hear. She saved you. Without her, you'd all be dead. And still you call her monster? His words cut through the night, but the villagers looked away, their fear stronger than their gratitude. The girl clenched her fists, her body trembling. She could have roared. She could have torn them down in anger. But instead, she stayed silent. She turned her back to them, her eyes glowing with sorrow. She whispered to the soldier, only loud enough for him to hear, "Maybe monster is all I ever be." He shook his head fiercely. "No, you're more than that. You're a warrior." She looked at him, her gaze searching his face as if trying to find truth in his words. And though the crowd still murmured and glared, she stood taller beside him, her heart torn between rage and hope. In that moment, she realized the battle had only begun, not the one against raiders, but the one for her place among humans. The night after the battle, the council gathered in the meeting hall. Smoke from burning torches curled into the air, and the wooden benches creaked under the weight of angry men and fearful women. The village elder stood tall, his voice loud enough to shake the walls. "She cannot stay," he declared. "She is a danger to us all. Today she fought for us, but tomorrow she could destroy us." The villagers nodded, their whispers full of fear. Some shouted words like monster, curse, and killer. Others demanded her execution. They did not care that without her strength, they would all be lying in the ashes left by the raiders. Their fear blinded them, their voices sharp with hate. She stood at the center of the hall, her hands still stained with blood from the battle. Her glowing eyes moved from face to face, reading only fear and disgust. Her lips tightened, and her chest rose and fell slowly. She did not beg. She did not defend herself. She stood tall, her scars burning under the firelight, as though she had already accepted their judgment. The soldier pushed his way to the front, his voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Enough." The hall fell silent for a moment, every eye turning toward him. He stepped beside her, his boots striking the wooden floor with purpose. "You all saw what she did. You saw her save your children, your wives, your homes. And now you would kill her? Have you no shame?" The elder's face hardened. "We saw her power, too much power. Humans cannot control her. Today she kills our enemies. Tomorrow she kills us. Fear is not shame, it is wisdom." The soldier's fists clenched. He turned to the crowd, his voice strong, refusing to shake. "You call her a monster because it is easy, because it is safer than admitting you were wrong. You chained her, you cursed her, and still she fought for you. She had every reason to let you burn, but she didn't. She saved you, even though you never saved her." The words struck some of the villagers like stones, but the fear was deep. Murmurs rose again. Blades glinted in the firelight as men tightened their grips. The girl finally spoke. Her voice was low, carrying more pain than anger. "It is true. I saved you, and still you hate me. You fear me." She turned her head slightly, her glowing eyes meeting the soldiers. For a second, something softer flickered there, but then it vanished. She spread her arms wide, her claws glinting. "If death is what you want, then kill me now." Gasps filled the hall. Some men raised their blades, ready to strike, but the soldier stepped forward, his body between her and them. His voice thundered. "No one touches her." The elder slammed his staff against the floor. "Do not defy the council, soldier." "I defy nothing," the soldier shot back. I defend what is right. You fear her because she is different. You call her a beast, but I see her for what she is, a warrior, braver than any of you. While you hid, she fought. While you doubted, she bled. And still, you would spit on her name? The villagers grew restless, caught between fear and shame. Some lowered their weapons, their eyes flickering with doubt. Mothers remembered how she had saved their children from fire. Fathers remembered how she had stood in front of the raiders when no one else dared. The girl's chest tightened as she watched the soldier stand firm against his own people. No one had ever defended her. No one had ever raised their voice for her. She had lived her whole life as an enemy, a prisoner, a monster. Yet here was this foolish human, standing like a shield in front of her. But even as hope stirred, despair pressed harder. She shook her head slowly, her hair falling across her face. "They will never accept me," she whispered. Her voice cracked, the sound barely holding together. "Not while I am what I am." The soldier turned to her, his eyes fierce. "Then I will accept you, even if the world doesn't." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The firelight caught in her eyes, making them shine brighter, but not from rage this time. From something deeper, something she had buried for years. The elder saw the shift and slammed his staff again. "Enough," he roared. "If she stays, she dooms us all. Tomorrow at dawn, she will be executed. That is the law." The villagers erupted into cheers and cries, their fear winning over their doubt. Guards stepped forward, ready to bind her again. The soldier moved instantly, his hand on his weapon, his body blocking their path. His voice shook the hall. "If you try, you will face me." The guards hesitated. The villagers gasped. No one had expected one of their own to stand against them. The elder's eyes narrowed. "Would you betray your people for her?" The soldier's reply was clear, loud, and certain. "If betraying you means protecting what is right, then yes." The hall fell into stunned silence. The girl stood motionless, her body tense, her claws curled, but her eyes fixed on him. Something inside her cracked, something heavy that had been chained far longer than her body. For the first time in her life, she was not alone. But the danger was not over. The council would not back down so easily. The dawn execution still stood, and the villagers' fear was still strong. She knew the soldier's words had bought her time, but not safety. She looked at him, her voice low, almost trembling. "You risk your life for me. Why?" His answer came without hesitation. "Because you deserve it." Her breath caught, her heart pounding in a way that battle never caused. She looked away quickly, hiding the storm in her chest. The hall remained thick with silence, broken only by the crackle of fire. The night ended with guards retreating, but their eyes sharp with warning. The council broke apart, muttering promises of dawn. And as the villagers drifted back to their homes, whispers spread through the air. Some of hate, some of doubt, but all of them about her. She stood in the shadows outside, the soldier beside her. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Maybe tomorrow I die." "Not if I can stop it," he answered firmly. And in that moment, with death promised and hope fragile, the bond between them became unbreakable, forged in defiance of fear itself. Dawn came with a red sky, the air heavy as if the world itself held its breath. Villagers gathered in the square, their faces pale but firm, weapons in hand. The elder stood at the front, his staff raised high, his voice carrying across the crowd. "Today, we end the curse. Today, the monster dies." His words rolled like thunder, and the crowd answered with shouts, though many of their eyes held more fear than courage. She stood in the center, her wrists bound again, though the rope looked weak compared to her strength. She did not fight. She did not fight. She did not snarl. Her eyes glowed faintly, her face clung to the villagers. She had accepted this moment. Her heart whispered that humans would never see her as anything else. To them, she would always be the wild creature in chains, no matter what she had done to save them. But he was there too, the soldier, standing at her side. His hands gripped his rifle, his jaw set. He had not slept, had not moved from her side through the night. Now, as the elder raised his staff and called for her death, he stepped forward, his voice loud and unshaken. "She is not your enemy." The crowd stirred, their whispers colliding with one another. The elder's face darkened. "She is a danger. We must kill her before she kills us." The soldier shook his head, his eyes blazing with fire. "You saw her fight for you. You saw her bleed for you. She saved your children, your homes. And this is how you thank her? With a noose? The villagers shifted uneasily. Some lowered their weapons, remembering the sight of her protecting them. But fear still held them. Fear was harder to break than chains. The elder slammed his staff. You would risk all our lives for her? One human against many? You are a fool. Before the soldier could answer, a horn blasted from the hills. Shouts rang out, and all eyes turned toward the horizon. Raiders again. Ships breaking through the sky, their weapons glowing. The village gasped in terror. The elder's words turned to dust in his throat. The enemy had returned, stronger, angrier, ready to burn everything to the ground. The soldier looked at her. Her eyes burned, her body tense, but her hands still tied. Without hesitation, he cut her ropes. She blinked, stunned for a moment, then stared at him. He gave her a single nod. Fight with me. For the first time, her lips curled into a true smile, sharp and fierce. Always. The raiders crashed into the village, their weapons firing, their war cries shaking the earth. The villagers scattered in panic. The elder shouted orders, but no one listened. Fear consumed them. Only two figures stood firm, the soldier and the alien girl. She leapt into the fray, her speed like lightning. She grabbed a raider by the throat and hurled him into the fire. Another swung his blade, but she twisted, her claws tearing through his armor. Blood sprayed, the ground shaking beneath her wild fury. She was unstoppable, a storm of strength and rage. The soldier fought at her side, his rifle firing with precision, covering her as she moved. Together they became a wall of defiance. Where he aimed, she struck. Where she faltered, he shielded. Their bond, born in chains and distrust, now shown in battle, unbreakable. The villagers watched in awe. The monster they had feared now fought for them again, her glowing eyes filled not with hatred for them, but with fury for their enemies. A mother clutched her child, whispering, "She's saving us." Again. The raiders' leader appeared, larger than before, armored in black metal, his weapon glowing red. He roared, pointing his blade at her. "You will die this time, beast," she snarled, stepping forward, her claws curling. But the soldier moved beside her, his voice steady. Not alone. The leader charged, swinging his blade in arcs that cut through air and wood alike. She leapt, her claws clashing against the glowing weapon, sparks bursting. The soldier fired, each shot striking the leader's armor, slowing him, giving her openings. She moved faster, stronger, her body alive with fury. With one final cry, she tore the blade from the leader's hand, snapping it in two. Then she drove him to the ground, her claws at his throat. The battlefield fell silent. The raiders froze, their leader defeated. She could have killed him. The crowd waited, breathless, expecting blood. But she paused. She looked at the soldier, his eyes steady, filled with trust. Slowly, she lowered her hand. She spared the leader's life. The raiders, stunned, dragged their master away and fled into the hills, broken once more. The village stood in ruins, but it was still alive. Alive because of her. The villagers stepped closer, their eyes no longer burning with hatred, but with something else, respect. Mothers wept, fathers bowed their heads. The elder trembled, his staff shaking in his hand. His voice broke as he spoke. Perhaps we were wrong. She turned to him, her glowing eyes sharp. Not wrong, she said, afraid. Her voice carried across the square, calm and strong. But fear cannot chain me anymore. The soldier stepped beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. For the first time, she did not flinch. She stood tall, her wild hair whipping in the wind, her scars shining in the morning light. The villagers whispered among themselves, their fear melting into silence. Then, slowly, they began to cheer. Not loud at first, but soft, then stronger, until the square filled with voices. They cheered not for themselves, not even for the soldier, but for her, the wild alien girl they had once called monster. Her chest rose and fell, her lips parting in disbelief. She looked at the soldier, her voice soft, almost trembling. "They accept me?" He smiled faintly. "They finally see you." She turned back to the crowd, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. And for the first time, she did not feel cursed or hated or alone. For the first time, she felt what it meant to be free. She whispered to herself, a vow that carried into the wind. "I will fight for them. I will fight for us." And beside her, the soldier knew the truth. He had not only freed her from chains, he had freed her from fear, from hatred, from the prison of her past. Together, they had changed everything. And in the hearts of the people who once feared her, the monster was gone. In her place stood a warrior.